Every sales representative should treat that onesie twosie sale customer and that $1 million customer exactly the same.
All right, everyone, welcome back to SALESBIZ. I appreciate you taking the time. Today, my guest comes from a long line of sales experience. I'm super impressed with actually his biotechnology experience and now dabbling a lot in the UV space, which is obviously very important given the time that we live in. So had to reach out and introduce myself and get to know this gentleman. And everything I've heard so far is absolutely inspiring. So wanted to get to know him a little bit better. So Mr. Tim Clancy, welcome, sir.
Wow, what an introduction. How can I even, we might as well just call it a day and just say thanks so much everybody for listening. No, I'm just kidding. Well,
hold on. Before I lose you here. I appreciate you taking the time, Tim. So tell us a little bit about yourself before we get started. I mentioned over 20 years of experience. Highlight a little bit of that for us.
All right. Yep, 20 years of experience, highlights. Yeah. So I think basically my experience, I'm an oddity. I came to this country 20 years ago. So I guess I'm the American dream. You know, arrived in this country. We had 2 kids at the time. My wife's American. We had two kids at the time. Arrived in Boston, 8 suitcases. Myself, my wife, 2 kids. No house, no car, no job.
Wow.
So I guess where I come from is opportunity reigns. There is always got to be a bright side to some things. Not spin, bright side. There's always got to be opportunity, conversation. And with that, I started my first year in this country as a recruiter, making 120 calls a day. Hey, you want a job? Click. Hey, do you want a job? Click. Built a little bit of networking skills, moved into pharmaceutical sales. So I was a member of a pharmaceutical sales team, antibiotics predominantly with a major company there. Stayed with them for a couple of years. Weaved in and out of biotechnology, breaking ground biotechnology in regard to genetics. Ended my tenure as the pharmaceutical executive with a company called Teva. You may have heard of them. Very small, kind of major pharmaceutical company. And then moved into diagnostic testing. Basically built on 2 principles. 1, experience, contacts, which are something that hopefully whoever listens to this takes it away. Contacts are number 1. They actually might even circumference a sale. It's as simple as that. Took my experience of connections, I guess, with major hospital groups, small doctors' offices and so on. Went to a couple of startup diagnostic companies. They were bought over. Have a relevant background in some immunology companies as well in relation to the Ebola outbreak many years ago in Africa. Then moved back into the domestic world, I guess. Sales platforms, technology platforms, so on, artificial intelligence. And then arrived here at OMNI Solutions, where in a very short period of time, I went from business development manager to vice president of Middle East, North Africa sales. Basically because of my connections overseas, Saudi Arabia, Dubai, or United Arab Emirates, Jordan, Bahrain, that whole scope. So we've been doing a lot of business development there. We've actually partnered with a company which I've kind of orchestrated, and we're building towards major sales in the multiple millions, I guess. But small acorns, large trees. Started off with a $253 sale I had 6 months ago. Now we're looking at between 15 to 25 million. This is so we're that's kind of where I am without boasting too much. But that's where we are.
Love it. Awesome. Appreciate the breakdown. So did you always think like I'm going to get into sales, and did you always like the idea of talking to someone, persuading someone to buying a product?
Okay, so my history back in the UK comes from a small wine family. My father owned his own wine business for 51 years, thereabouts. And I think he was the best salesperson I've ever known. I mean, don't get me wrong, I've had hundreds of thousands of dollars spent on my pharmaceutical companies to learn how to sell. But the important thing that I learned from him, the basics, yes. conversation, relaxed conversation, not always thinking the side of your sales goal, but what does the other person want to hear from you? It could be disconnected completely, but yeah. So I've always been in that sales role, I guess. Parents have driven me into that with a family business, then kind of like moved out by myself into other objectives and so on. So worked within Central Europe, mainland Europe as well as the UK as a whole. And then met my wife, and then it all went downhill from there. No, I'm just kidding. I'm just kidding. You gotta have a sense of humor, but so you always gotta have a sense of humor about things. That's the other.
I'm pretty sure I'm gonna get yelled at tonight for saying something about this on the podcast. But
please,
that's what makes it fun.
Always in trouble. Exactly.
I am Mike.
It's my job to get a rise out of my wife.
I am Mike Petrosyan to the world, but when I'm Michael,
it's trouble.
That's something's going on.
Gotcha.
So wine business, you didn't want to take over the family venture there, or was that not even an opportunity?
It was an opportunity, but you decide to try something by yourself. I mean, there is no such word as failure. There's only failure to try. And that's what I tell everybody I meet. If you don't give it a try, why not? I mean, failure, yes, I've known some, but at least I tried. We used to give it a go. And my father passed away when I was 21 and left the company in the hands of my mother and some other associates. But it wasn't something I wanted to pursue exclusively. I wanted to find out, how the world met Tim Clancy and Tim Clancy met the world. And it worked. I cannot complain with the experience I gained just from making a fool of myself, I guess. And also learning. As a sales rep, we should always be learning in anything we do.
Absolutely.
In anything we do.
Condolences to your dad, man. My mom also passed away when I was 18. I think that creates some sort of different fire within us, right? When you experience something like that early on.
Yeah.
Like you not only do you want to try, you feel a little bit more resilient to rejection or failure. It's like at that point, something bad like that happened. What's the worst that could happen at this point? To try something else. So I completely resonate with that.
Oh yeah. And it also, I think it gave me the kick in the pants, I guess. To realize that this is today. What we do today, I don't know if I got it tomorrow. Nobody does. So I got to make a bigger splash today, just for tomorrow.
Amen to that. See, I knew there was something special about you. You're speaking my language here, Tim. I always go with my gut instinct, whether it's the right thing or the wrong thing. I'll learn from it. But at least as long as I have a good intention with it, it doesn't hurt anything to try. So kudos to that, my friend. So you went from wine sales and then you started your business in recruiting. How did you end up in biotechnology? Because I feel like there's a little bit more education or maybe experience that needs to go along with pharmaceutical sales, but tell us more about that.
Well, it was one of those things. When I got my opportunity with the recruiting company, I grabbed it. It's kind of funny for another time, I guess, that story. But I think
we got the time, my friend.
We do have the time, don't we? So with recruiting, you can't help but make relationships. With my background, with my education, not I pin a lot on that these days. I don't think I ever pinned a lot on that, to be honest with you. But because at the end of the day, whether you have a degree or not, whether you have a 2-year or 4-year or master's, if you can't sell, you can't sell. But if you don't have a degree and you can sell, that's a winner right there. But to kind of like take it back to how did I transition into biotechnology? Well, it was a simple case of my experience with pharmaceutical sales, my experience with drug development, with marketing, because I did everything. I listened to people, I worked with people, I put my hand up. Yes, I was that annoying rep. I always put my hand up to doing something with the team, because we win as a team, we lose as a team.
So how did you get into like pharmaceutical sales, for instance? Like, what was that interview process like, not having a biology background?
Oh, it was terrible. It was absolutely. So it was, they kind of look at you and go, okay, so you've got some background in biology, but you don't really have a biology degree. So why should we take a chance on you? And I started off as a renter rep. I'm proud of it. I worked with Ventive US Sales. Their Bear contract, and then I was transitioned into Bear. And it was one person, Bill Winsey was his name, and he took the chance on me. He said, because the conversation that we had, it was all about how I projected yourself. And that's what you've got to look at. I mean, even if you go into a job that's really not suited for you, and I guess this is for everybody listening, it's not really suited for you, but it's projection. If you involve the interviewer in your conversation, in your life, if you give them a piece of who you are, 9 times out of 10, you'll walk out of there either making a phenomenal impact, which might not get you this job, but will get you that next job, because you will be remembered. Or you walk out with a job. And I did. He wrote a piece of paper on a sticky note. I actually still have it somewhere. It was a sticky note. He wrote a number, and he turned around and he said, "Does that look good to you?" And I said, "That's great. Does it come with a car?" "Yes." "Fine, you got me. When do you want me to start?" That was
You even negotiated it. I love it. Took a chance on that one.
You always have to negotiate. You always have to. I mean, to be sales reps and you're not negotiating, then you have that turn off switch, and that's not what you should have as a sales rep. Absolutely. Or a sales manager or a vice president, whichever.
I have a rule that my colleagues and I have at a current company I'm working with. If someone on the sales team is getting on, joining the team, and they don't negotiate their salary or negotiate some part of their contract, I immediately have second doubts on whether we should have him or her join the team, because it should come with the territory. I feel like, if you're going to be in fashion, you can't just walk in completely not dressed well. If you're going to work in real estate, you can't walk in just without having a portfolio or some sort of recommendations. Right. And sales,
always have that brag book, and it's a term that's so 90s. You've got to have some kind of demonstration. I was speaking with a dear friend of mine. He's or was my area manager, and he said, with Duramed at the time, they were bought over by Teva, and he said, you always got to have something in your hand when you're in a job interview. Even if it's one pager, not the resume, but just something from previous employers stating X, Y, Z. That's the winner. The person that doesn't have anything, you better be 99.99% right, exactly what we're looking for, easy, because I wouldn't hire anybody. You've always got to have some kind of brag book, and brag book is something that's kind of gone out of fashion to some extent, which is unfortunate. I think maybe because companies don't like to kind of like print off stuff or send stuff to their reps anymore. But have something in your hands, have some whatever recommendation from your clients. That's the kind of stuff you need.
Yeah. Absolutely. I think people label it a little bit differently. If you think about it, LinkedIn is a brag book, Instagram is a brag book, a one pager, a white paper is a brag book, a resume, or a business plan. It's technically all showcasing what you're trying to accomplish and getting to that common goal, whether it's raise money or get a better salary, etc. So,
and that's, I mean, I probably the last five jobs or 4 jobs I've ever gone for, I've always gone in there with a business plan.
Yeah,
absolutely. And that speaks volumes, because it shows how you can think out of the box. It shows how you adopt to whatever territory you've been given or possibly interviewing for. And I came from the Northeast, and that was an incredibly difficult arena. I mean, it was a completely different selling landscape than even in Florida or even in the Midwest here. But I walked in there for this job, I walked in with an idea and a business plan, and he said, "Oh, where's your resume?" I said, "I don't need a resume. I use my business plan. This is what I'm going to do with your job that you're going to give me at the end of this day." And the CEO turned around and said, "I don't know if I'm going to give you the job." I said, "But at the end of this conversation, you will. It's all about attitude." You got to have that right attitude. If you go in doubting yourself, it's going to come straight out for the interview.
Absolutely. Absolutely. So outside of the confidence and outside of the experience, do you think that there's a specific trait you have that makes you good at sales, or is it something that you've adopted through books, mentors? How did you get to that state of, where you are today?
I think basically my idea in sales is I've been taught how to be a salesperson, but I've had the sales idea in my head really from day one. And that's why it's so imperative for people who want to get into sales or are in sales to listen to the mentors. They've been there, they've done that. They've got the t-shirt. We've all done that. It could shorten a sales cycle. It could lengthen a commitment cycle. Commitment cycle is a good thing because
right.
we need to cross the T's, dot the I's before that big deal comes through. And so those are the kind of things. But I never stopped asking people, how did they do it? How do you get to be number one?
Yeah.
How do how can you be the President's Club winner 60 years in a row? How do you keep that momentum going? How do you keep that strength going? Yeah. And sometimes they look at you with really strange and say, I don't know. Sometimes they can give you an A to B list that you wish you had to put pen and paper down. Other times it's sort of like, I just go in and I talk to people.
Yeah. Absolutely. So current industry right now, Tim, I mentioned earlier during my intro that you're doing a lot of stuff in UV technology.
Yeah.
We live in a pretty crazy time right now. So let's start off with, tell us a little bit about how you got into that side of the field and a little bit of the actual technology aspect of it. Like what makes it so great?
So I guess I have a lot of experience with UV because we used it with a couple of the small biotech companies who were using UV for a form of rendition for either level 2 or level 4 labs. In other words, cleaning them bacterially and virally and fungally. Kind of funny how I fell into this job. But it's a kind of like a strange story. I worked with a company out of Denver. They had a great product, still is a great product. It's out there. It's being sold on a daily basis. They decided to move in a different direction, which was okay. Nobody turned around and says unemployment's fine. It's not, but it's okay. And I got a call from OMNI. We talked with the CEO. I talked with him for about an hour. I talked with the owner of OMNI Solutions for about an hour. We waited a couple of weeks. We wanted to see what happened with my previous company. Kind of stood back from that. It didn't really work out well for everybody, but at least I had something. I think I was unemployed for about 14 hours, to be honest with you. Went down, interviewed. Wanted to know more about the technology. Now, technology is, it's a cross-reference. It's an A, B, and C UV light. It's either static or it's mobile. And I think people have labeled UV very expensive. So our company has managed to source, build, as well as have a development team in relation to producing UV light, which is cost-effective. Because healthcare has not got a blank check anymore, especially in this day and age where consumption of money is just a burning ton, to be honest with you, with healthcare in the USA. And so we just introduced the product into the medical arena. It's already been here. The other products of OMNI is a UV ozone system for laundries. So your laundry is clean. It's disinfected. Extends the life. It lowers the utility costs. It's both green and clean. And I know it sounds very cliche to say that, but it is. Reduces your cost by 80%, 20% on your utility bills. You get clean clothes, biologically clean clothes. Hospitals can use it. Laundromats can use it, which gives it a cost-effective way for everybody to have, especially today, clean cleaner clothes than they had before, especially with the UV light, which is an independent concept. That's why I think in the United Arab Emirates or in Middle East, North Africa, where I now play, I guess, it's being adopted at a horrific speed, as a first line rather than a last line kind of defense. So UV is being deployed actively all over the Middle East because of the concept of mutation, the concept of crossing over what we have as COVID-19, crossing over to potential, which it has done in Denmark, with small animals. So they're terrified of it. The Saudis are terrified of it, and so we've managed to step in with a very cost-effective. Also, our after-sales service is phenomenal. Also, our rep service is fantastic. I'm not going to lie, and we also have people on the ground, which was the first measure to do. We couldn't have done what we've done in the last 6 months without having somebody on the ground in Riyadh. And that was medical KPI. Dr. Nafa Asura has been instrumental in helping our company get a foothold, develop that foothold. And I'll probably be going out there in January, February, permitting of transit visas, to cement that relationship.
Beautiful. So with respect to hand sanitizer, for instance, is there what is the difference between me, let's say, putting some hand sanitizer on my hands versus getting some UV light on it? Like, how effective are the differences between the two? And apologies if you're not too vast on the actual biology side, but I'm just curious, whatever you know about it.
Sure. Well, hand sanitizer is a gold standard, especially 70% alcohol is a gold standard. So there's really the argument of short and long-term use of UV light versus using hand sanitizer. Hand sanitizer is an immediate source of clean. Right. So, I mean, you can't, but for the concept of using UV on your hands or from going from a particular room to a particular room is another gold standard. UV is a gold standard of clean as well. But what it does, to have that as a replacement, I would probably say no. But as to have it as an adjunct, most certainly. Hand sanitizer and then potentially using UV later, or using UV and then using hand sanitizer after. Some of the school systems have adopted that already, especially in our HVAC system, which we actually have. We're one of about 6 companies actually have that in the world, is a UV system for air conditioning. So it cleans the air as it rotates through the system because the bulb's always on.
That's amazing. Yeah, I think I've been to the hospital a few times just as a regular checkup. And when you put it under the hand sanitizer, there was a UV light also on top of the hand sanitizer. So it's kind of like a 2-in-1. And anyway, it sparked some questions for me. Yeah. So from an impact of COVID standpoint, you mentioned COVID earlier. It sounds like you folks have been busier as opposed to being heavily impacted by COVID. From an operations standpoint, but tell us a little bit more about what's going on.
I think OMNI as a whole has adopted, because we're such a streamlined organization. We can adopt a principle very quickly. We have a phenomenal product, for instance, called OMNI Shield. OMNI Shield is a saline-based sealant. What that does is actually kills bacteria, viruses, and fungal on touch. It lasts up to 90 days, for instance, on any surface. Coupled with UV, coupled with our laundry system, which was our standby product anyway. So we've adapted to requests because we've been getting calls from people from all over the world asking about our UV system and seeing how we could assist in it. And this was back in March. And almost instantaneously, we had a workable model for UV system. We had some secondary suppliers here based in the US for UV lights, just to basically augment what was being asked for. And that's why we kind of moved to developing and executing and also deploying different sizes of UV lights for different situations. So I think, OMNI as a company has the ability to change direction incredibly swiftly.
Yeah, absolutely. So from a sales standpoint, sounds things are going well, or do you feel like there's still a minor recession, I guess, happening with a lot of unemployment, everything, there are people kind of scaling back on their budgets or their, firing back on costs? Are you seeing some of that?
I think yes, but I think we want to counter that by saying, and this is how we, one or two conversations I've had in the past, in the very recent past actually, is you shouldn't cut back, period. You shouldn't furlough those people. You shouldn't, if you're a restaurant or a hotel or a gaming area or so, you shouldn't do that. What you should do is look for alternatives to make people feel safe. The mask wearing, well, that's a different conversation for a different time, of course. But with our product base, with anybody's UV light, and it's not just ours, it's anybody's, should be deployed, should be used in HVAC for gyms, for restaurants, to keep the air clean. Then we can deal with do with the surfaces, with our protection, and the floors and the seats. So when you go out for a Friday night dinner or a Saturday night dinner or even a Thanksgiving dinner, you're assured that service is not just good service, it's not just good times, but it's also a very clean area. So the marketing principle, if you want to go down that street, is phenomenal. That's why the contraction of businesses should not be contraction, it should be expansion. It should be adopting this, going to the banks and saying, hey, or going to the governments and saying, hey, excuse me, I need a loan so that I can keep my business afloat. And this is what I've decided to do.
Yeah. So with respect to COVID and the upcoming new year, are there any other revolutionary technologies that you're hearing about that could potentially help either reduce the cases or maybe even, potentially dissolve it altogether?
I think there's about two or three. We've got one under development ourselves. There's one which we're looking at, which we can't really talk about, but there's a couple of other. For instance, there's a company in California. I worked with them for several years, and it's a copper plate which kills bacteria and virals on contact. So you leave your shoes on the copper plate. Copper plate can be very small, it can be very big. Depends what kind of location it is. And so schools, plastic shielding, impregnated with microban. It's an older technology now being revamped, now being given the ability to be useful again, I guess. Right. So there is definitely, and that's I guess where the question of expansion rather than contraction, people are looking for alternatives, ways to be clean, to be in control, and not to eliminate, because we want to look at the vaccine questions and so on. But certainly to make people feel safer going to a location versus unsafe, or it's a gamble.
Yeah, absolutely. And clearly this is a popular market right now, Tim, whether it's becoming a mass company or starting your own sanitizer organic brand or something along those lines. Anything that's moving us closer to cleanliness, an overall sanitized environment, I feel like it's going to be a hot market down the road. So what advice would you have for someone as a one to be rep or a salesperson that wants to get into this market? And then, if you were to have someone sit in front of you and ask you, Tim, how do I get into this specific industry? What advice would you give that person?
I guess to get into the arena that we're involved in, my advice is purely just one thing. What are you vested in trying to do here? You want to make a lot of money? Do you want to make a name for yourself? Do you want to just make a difference? I know it sounds a little pedantic, I guess. That's a big word for this evening, isn't it? But do you want to just do something for people? And those are the questions as a rep you have to ask yourself. I want to make a lot of money. Okay. So do you want to go with a national company or with a small company and build a base? Small company, build a base, that's where the best place to go. Not always. because smaller companies are not looking for the lowest canning kind of personality. They're looking for somebody that can realize where and when a deal is ready to go. Definitely, I would look at the smaller base companies because they do need a lot more help. They do need a lot more voice out there. And that's something, you know, how can you project the image of the product? How can you project the image of yourself in not being that sales rep? And this is what I try and tell everybody I meet. Don't be the sales rep. Listen. Hear the words of the customer. It might not happen this time, but it will happen. I've had clients call me about companies I used to work with 5, 6, 10 years ago. Hey, I've got this question. Can you help me? Well, I don't work there anymore, but let me talk to you. Treat everybody, every sales representative, and we talked about this the last time, every sales representative should treat that onesie twosie customer and that $1 million customer exactly the same. And why is that? It's good practice. Referral business. And it makes you feel good about just helping people out. We're all here to make money. We're sales reps. But when you walk out of an office with a onesie twosie order and you walk out of an office with $1 million order, you can just take those conversations and interlock them into your sales conversation, your verbiage, your linguistics, however way you want to say it. I say sales pitch. And that's kind of what I looked at people across the table and said, you know, where do you, you know, don't ever go down that shoe. Where do you see yourself in 5 years? That seems to be the most corny question. Well, I see myself in your position in 5 years. That didn't get me a job, by the way, when I said that, but I didn't like the guy I was interviewing with, and I'm not going to tell you the company I was working for, Weaver. Anyway, but you know, you've got to see yourself in that situation. It's not always about the sale. It's about how you can take the conversation from the onesie twosies to the $1 million guy and interject those pearls of wisdom from somebody peer to peer with the customers and how you can close that deal. Yeah.
End of day, you know, I think when it comes to sales, is if you're just that person that naturally likes to help people, and when you naturally like to help people, you're probably a good listener because you already listened to the problem that they have and you want to help solve it. So listening is probably it. But if you're genuinely passionate, like you said, you know, treat every person from admin to CEO the same, you're probably going to be successful. I think there is a little bit of that passion too there as well. I think in your industry specifically, I'd imagine some people are wondering like, heck, I've been selling tires my entire life. Maybe this is something that's actually going to bring more meaning, especially given the time we're living in right now. So many deaths, so many cases. Are you getting some of that in your industry by chance? Of people coming up to you like, hey, Tim, I want to give back. I want to help because what you're doing right now actually, you know, seems like it matters more.
In some respects, yes. I've had conversations over the last probably 3 months of people who have said, you know, I don't know what I can do, but what can I make a difference in? How can I make a difference in? You got to listen to where they are and what space they're in, and then you've got to turn around and say, well, you know, be a mentor. Not a sales rep, but maybe just be a mentor to some kid who just needs that stabilizing personality, that it's going to be okay personality. My wife always turns around and says to me, how can you be so buoyant? You just lost, and I've lost some big sale. How can you be so buoyant after this loss of a major sale or loss of a hospital that I was working on for almost 18 months back in Connecticut? Because it didn't matter. I didn't have it in the first place. It was always going to be new money. I didn't have it. If I'd had it and lost it, okay, we get a little grouchy. But I never had it. So it didn't matter. And a lot of salespeople and a lot of people turn around and say, oh my God, you're right. You are so right. It's the same even in this company here. I was given the benefit of pursuing my passion and introducing our products overseas. And my boss turned around and said, so what happens if you lose something here? I said, well, we never had it in the first place, so it doesn't matter. 5 or 6 phone calls at 2 o'clock in the morning doesn't matter to me. I'm up anyway. You just gotta give it a try.
Absolutely. Yeah. The whole, when it comes to sales, once again, for me, there's got to be something that I'm actually excited about when it comes to the product. I have a thing. It's product, people, product, and process. Those things. If you have those three things that you're actually passionate about, usually means that you're probably going to do well by selling it.
Yep.
But I actually started in sales because I started doing blood donations. I was calling people like, "Hey Tim, this is Mike with so and so. We had a car accident happen last night, and someone needs O positive blood. Would you be able to come in?" And the reason why I did well is because of what I just told you. It's like, wow, I did not know this was such a big problem. And then when there was like these cases we would get on our desks and we would call, it was such an easy sell. But to think that getting a pint of blood for someone for free would be a tough sell. But when you're pitching it differently, anyway, where I'm going with that, I found a lot of passion. I found a lot of reason within it, and that's why I did well. But I would imagine right now, with everything in the line of business that you're in, people are probably pouring through the door saying, I want to be a part of this, whether it's just an internship or maybe even just free work. Is that happening with you?
Yeah, it is. We're having a lot of independent reps now that we hire. I was interventional. We have a phenomenal one down here in Milwaukee, a phenomenal guy that I used to work with. Actually, I was his mentor in New York. We hired them as independent reps just to, and the distributor network, of course, is clamoring to get involved with UV. To sell to their clients, as school systems and bus systems and so on. So yes, there is, and they're coming from all walks of life. Some are coming from medical, some are coming from pharmaceutical sales, and some are coming from diagnostic. But some are also coming from one guy. We said, "Oh my gosh, where was he? He was selling baby formula."
Nice.
And he got followed, and then he was like, "Go," which seems a little strange, but anyway. But so we have different people from different walks of life. And you're right. If you have passion, if you have an understanding, if you have it's not a natural sales question, but if you have the ability to communicate effectively, and that's for one of my friends at Teva. If he ever watches this, he knows I'm talking about him. But that's if you can do that, then I can teach you about the product. I can teach you who to go after. I can teach you where to be at the right time. But if you've got enough passion, you've got enough understanding about the product, yes, go after it. Go after it.
No question. And last question for you, Tim. What's next for you? You've already had 20 years of success. You're clearly in the market that you're passionate about right now. What are you looking forward to? What does the next 5 years for Tim look like?
Oh wow. Not prison. No. It's so funny. Next 5 years. Basically, I'm building this company in Middle East. That's going to be my legacy, I guess. And that then the next 5 years, maybe after that, I want to take this to. Right now I've got speaking appointments to introduce this concept. Why? Because it's important to people to realize, how you can convey a message. And that's what I would love to do in the next 5 years, is be more active on the speaker market, is to give a little back, make people feel it's not all doom and gloom.
Absolutely. Well, you're giving back right now to this podcast. So
yeah,
it's a great meeting you, my friend. I really appreciate you taking the time, not just your experience, definitely respect it, but what you're doing right now, once again, evolving these technologies and continuing to reiterate that message to the world. I think you're doing a great job, and it's inspiring to me to actually want to do something more along the lines of cleanliness technology or sanitation, anything else to try to kick this crazy disease out as soon as possible. So thank you so much, Tim.
You're welcome. And you know what? You're right. We're humans. We can figure this out. We can put a plane in the sky. We can figure this out.
Absolutely. Absolutely.
And thank you so much for inviting me along to this. This has been grand.
Absolutely. Great to have you, Tim. Keep in touch, my
Right.
friend. Talk to you soon.
Sure.